Good day. It is time for another episode of the Fantasy Flyer. There we go. We're going to get a little sound noise going in there. My name is
Caught me off
Derek.
guard there.
I know. I got you. How's it going, Taylor?
Not too bad, not too bad. Another weird week of football, but saw some promising stuff from at least my team. One of the games I watched, minus the Mac Jones injury, but
Yeah, you had.
you know, it's bittersweet. Myers was out, but Devontae Parker went off. Mac Jones actually looked pretty decent, but yeah,
Last play of the game. Last play of the
very
game
last
got him.
play of the game.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Also, in response, is there ever not a weird week of football?
I
Is there
mean,
ever just one?
I I feel like these first 3 weeks have just been, you have really good teams playing insane, like out of their minds, and then the next week they're crap. And it's like there's no consistency right now. I feel
Yep.
like the most consistent team is the Jaguars, which last year were terrible. Like
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. It just feels a little more ridiculous than normal. And I feel like usually, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just misremembering, but I feel like usually by week 3, you really kind of start to feel like, okay, I have an idea of what's going on here with these players, these teams. But I mean, like the Colts, they have a win, a tie, and a loss. Literally a different
Yep.
outcome for each game. So I don't know.
I
It's
mean,
just kind of
we
wild.
do know that will end in week 4
Yeah.
because there's no fourth option. So,
Right.
and chances are it's going to be a win or a loss. Like ties, we already know about that, but
Yeah.
we will we'll hammer it out all the details as we go through our slate. First off, I want to start off with a little bit of news about the channel. So I wanted to share it with all of you guys watching our 7th episode. We do have a Facebook page that is up and running. It is, of course, called The Fantasy Flyer, if you didn't guess that. Oh my God, spoiler alert, it's The Fantasy Flyer. The link will be in the YouTube description somewhere down that direction. And we're going to have injury updates that are posted as we get closer to Saturday night. We will share our videos there, and we will also have a new segment called the Security Check, where we will use statistics and analysis, provide a basis for debate and a new point of view. We kind of want to get more feedback, both in the real football world and the fantasy landscape, from you guys, and the Facebook page is going to be the start for that. So just like the page, and you can see Security Check, get all those injury updates, see the video posts, and also would help us out a whole bunch. Me and Taylor would appreciate it. So moving on to the actual show, I'm going to let Taylor take it away with our 9 segment news, injury, notes, etc. And we got a lot of injuries to talk about, actually.
Yeah. I mean, a decent amount of like questionable things that hopefully will pan out during the week. But I guess most importantly here, Tua, who's going to play on Thursday, is questionable. He had that back injury. I guess there's also an ankle injury. Did I say industry? Anyways, and then I didn't read more on this, but there was like a potential concussion issue and like a whole thing about him, like why was he allowed back into the game? How did they let that slip? I haven't read more on that, but definitely a lot to monitor there on Tua with Thursday night coming up. I don't know if you had anything to add on that, but we can chat about it more when we get to the look ahead at that game.
Yeah, we'll chat about it.
Amon-Ra St. Brown ankle injury is questionable, but the tests were encouraging. Same team, DeAndre Swift has the shoulder sprain and is expected to miss a couple weeks. The wording was kind of weird, kind of like we feel that he would benefit from a few weeks off. So
Yeah.
I think it's causing him some pain, and they just want to make sure that he's right because he is obviously the future of the team. So, so yeah, definitely keep an eye on that if for some reason they change their mind, but he'll probably miss a couple weeks. Jalen Guyton, unfortunately, torn ACL, out for the season. So keep an eye on him, Allen, in conjunction with that, because Carter and Palmer may see a bump, or Williams could be dominant again, even though he had a bad week. Although I guess he had that touchdown, right, to salvage a little bit.
Yeah.
Sterling Shepard, unfortunate. He was having a pretty decent start to his season. He tore his ACL. He's out for the season. We talked about it at the top of the show. Mac Jones, unfortunately, kind of got his ankle twisted up. Maybe torn ligaments or something. I don't quite remember exactly what they said, but he's expected to miss a couple of weeks, and it looks like he's going to avoid surgery.
I was
So
about
just
to say, I think that was something that they were bringing up, is that
yeah,
this is normally the type of severe high ankle sprain where surgery is expected. So that's kind of good news to hear that he's not going to have to get surgery.
yeah, and I'm not quite sure why he's not having the surgery. Whether it was, yeah, I mean, I guess obviously they had it evaluated, and that is good news, but it's also kind of like, I don't know, if the surgery would make it better in the long term, I feel like they should do it, but I don't know. I'm
Right.
not a doctor or not an NFL coach either. So, anyways, Dalvin Cook shoulder injury is day to day. This is something that he's kind of had, honestly, I think since like high school. So he, I don't know, he always misses a couple games each year, so definitely keep an eye on it, but
Right.
it's not out of the norm for him. So
Not at
hopefully he
all.
plays. Michael Thomas, unfortunate with the toe injury. He came out at some point, right, because of this, and didn't play the
Yeah,
rest
there
of the game.
was there was a few different there was a few different at the same time. Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry had his minor foot injury. Traquan Smith had a concussion at the end of the game. And other than that, it was like Jameis Winston trying to figure it out with Chris Olave.
Mhm.
But yeah, they all kind of came out at the same. Thomas is I believe they said he's not expected to miss time. Traquan Smith, we don't know. Jarvis Landry, I don't know yet. I haven't read anything on it. Said minor foot injury, so that's a good sign. But that's about all I got for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely a handful of names to monitor there.
Yes, sir.
David Montgomery, this really killed me because I was hoping for a decent week out of him, and I swapped him out at the last minute on one of my teams. I forget who I had in before him, but he leaves the game really early with the ankle or foot injury. So he's probably going to miss some time. But actually, I don't know. I shouldn't say probably. Keep an eye on it, but it doesn't seem like he'll be playing next week, which is awesome for Khalil Herbert, who had a great game.
Yep.
Um, let's see. Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson still questionable. They're on their way back, but not expected to play this week. There was moving on. There was Dak. There was news of Dak possibly playing in week 4. That doesn't seem to be the case. They're looking towards week 5.
I don't know why they would bring him back. I
Yeah,
don't
there's no
know.
reason to. Cooper Rush is winning. There's no reason to bring him back early.
I Right. It's like I'll just stay right exactly where you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with Gallup. Well, not same thing. Actually, Gallup looks like they're hopeful for him to play in week 4, but obviously keep an eye on him because he has been sort of tiptoeing that line of possibly playing. So we'll see if week 4 is actually the week. Let's see. Byron Pingle is on IR. Not really a huge that doesn't really affect too many people, but I mean that
Well,
team is kind of a crapshoot for wide receivers, anyways.
yeah, we'll talk about that more as we get to the Texans and Bears game, because I now have developed a full stance after 3 weeks on that. So
Yeah, and then the Kansas City Tampa Bay game this week, the NFL is working on a contingency plan. Game is supposed to take place in Tampa Bay, but obviously due to the hurricane, they may have to move it. So keep an eye on if it gets rescheduled or how that plays out.
I think
Uh,
that's a bigger piece than we really kind of give it, because this
yeah,
is a fairly big game. I think between Kansas City, especially with what happened this past week, both teams lost in games they probably shouldn't have lost in. Like if you at the beginning of the season, Obviously, there's things that happened with both teams that kind of brought it out of their control. But now to not be at home when you're supposed to be at home,
Mhm.
I mean, that hurts. That hurts Tampa Bay, and it's just extra movement for Kansas City. So
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know whether it will also have an effect on Tampa Bay's practice schedule. Whether they decide to, like, if the NFL moves it early enough where they can go somewhere in practice, or how that
I
works out.
had I had seen, and I think this is still accurate. I had seen that they were moving to the Dolphins practice facility in Miami,
Okay.
which is probably going to have to be moved again because that's not far enough away for a hurricane to miss.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, like, I know they said it was like supposed to be Tampa as a direct hit, but it's not like Florida's 700 miles wide. So it's kind of one of those things where Miami's a good start, but why don't we try, like, I don't know, New Orleans or LSU or Bama or something, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll be that nice to Florida, but any Florida team, but still, that's my point. So I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll keep an eye on that as we get a little closer. There'll probably be an announcement, I would imagine, in the next, we'll say 48 hours um, for that. But is that all for the night? The news and notes? I'm not even looking at it right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. But it's just kind of funny to me that they might use Miami, which I don't know. They're just gonna hop all over Florida. Why don't they go to Jacksonville?
Right. Give it a shot. Take whatever works for them at the
Yeah.
time. So it's just it's not going to be the best ideal situation for the team going
No.
into week 4. We'll just say that. We'll leave it
Yeah.
at that. All right. Well, really quick, not really quick. That's a lie because we don't go through these really quickly. But we're going to start our review segment. We'll go through all the games of week 3. We're going to start off with our very first host v host game, which was the Bills at the Dolphins. This game had an over under of 53, and they weren't even close to it. So, despite the stats that, I mean, we talked about this in our pre-show. If I showed you the team stats between these two teams, you would have thought the Bills blew away the Dolphins,
Yeah.
and that's just not the case. Bills had 31 first downs, Dolphins had 15. The Dolphins ran 39 plays, the Bills ran 90. Bills had 490 some yards, and the Dolphins had 220 roughly. It just wasn't the Bills had the clock. They had time of possession, 40 minutes and some seconds to 19 minutes and some seconds. Like, I don't have an explanation for why this game is the way it is. I didn't. I was bouncing back and forth between so many different games in that 1 o'clock hour, and this was an interesting one. But just to see these stats at the end, and then who was behind all of these stats is even more. Devin Singletary had 11 targets.
Mm.
Like, my mind is blown at that because last year he was not, going into this year, he was not considered a passing back in any format.
Yeah.
And then he had a couple in the first couple weeks, but to bust out with 11 targets, and it's not like he took any from everybody else. Isaiah McKenzie had 9 targets. Stephon Diggs had 11 targets. Josh Allen threw the ball 63 times, and it had the other 10 or 12 had to go to somebody, and I guess that meant it was Devin Singletary. I don't know. All in all, I don't know how the Dolphins. Well, I know how the Dolphins got away with it, but I don't know how the Dolphins managed to do it on such little work. Like we talked about earlier, Tua is questionable for this week, which we'll touch on at the bottom of the show, as the Dolphins play on Thursday versus Cincinnati. So Cincinnati fixing their own problems. Dolphins may have one of their own. Allen, 42 for 63, 400 yards in this game, 2 touchdowns. He had 47 rush yards. So out of the 490 some yards, Josh Allen's responsible for 447 of them. Singletary only had 13 rush yards. Basically, nobody else kind of rushed. It was all passing at that point. McKenzie had, looks like 76 yards. I don't know if that's 8 or 7 receptions. It's one of the two. I put 8 and 7, and it looks like 87. Sure. We'll go with
It's
7. He did have a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 7 catches, 74 yards. He was you'd think with 400 yards, you'd think he'd have more than, he'd have 120 or 130, but seemed to be kept in check for much of the game. James Cook, important to note, he had 5 targets and 34 yards. Not as I think it was 2 weeks ago at the end of week 1. We kind of talked about how our patience was running thin, and then after week 2, he was replaceable, and now all of a sudden he has found a little bit of a name again in the passing. So Miami, Tua 13 for 18, 186 yards, 1 touchdown. Statistically, his worst game of the year, but you can't even really hate on it because they won. Jalen Waddle, 4 catches on 6 targets, 102 yards. Tyreek Hill, 2 catches on 4 targets for 33 yards. Nothing else amazing for Miami. I don't know. Do you have anything else that I missed or any other fun notes that you wish to add on? Because I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about this game. I'm impressed in the Dolphins' tenacity, whatever that word is, and their ability to go out and beat a tough Bills team. But also the Bills were missing a few key pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add that. Josh Allen alone had 3 fumbles that fortunately they were able to recover 2 of them, and only 1 was recovered by Miami. So that's part of the reason Miami was able to sort of get another opportunity despite all of the yards and offensive possession that the Bills had. James Crowder also had a fumble but recovered it. And then on the defensive side for Miami, Jerome Baker and Javon Holland were getting in there and really disrupting things for Allen. So hats off to Miami's defense for really coming up big and keeping Allen from getting all the way down the field and actually getting it in the end zone, other than the 2 touchdowns. So I think that was a big reason why they were able to, despite all the yards, keep them in check.
Yeah, Jerome Baker and Javon Holland combined for 23 tackles, total tackles, and 2 sacks. Miami as a team had 88 tackles and 9 pass deflections. So the defense was fairly decent. I'm trying to see if was there missed field goals. There's a lot of 1 missed field goal. There was a safety in this game. That was the butt.
I was gonna say then there's the butt punt.
The butt punt. Yeah, can't forget the butt punt. We have a missed field goal. Turnover on downs.
I was gonna say those 2 points for but Miami was the one with the butt punt, so never mind.
A fumble. Yeah, interesting. It's just an interesting game all the way around as far as from a stats point of view.
Yeah, not what I expected.
Not at all. Also important to note, I think if you're probably a little disappointed if you're the Tyreek Hill owner, probably even really the Stephon Diggs owner, although 7 for 74 will still give you a middle of the road wide receiver 1 or low end wide receiver 1 fantasy total. But be patient. There's much better to come. The Bills go to Baltimore this Sunday, and like I had mentioned earlier, Miami will travel to Cincinnati for Thursday Night Football. Game 2, those same Cincinnati Bengals at the New York Jets. They had their best opportunity to get their first win of the season after some rough 2 outings, and they did. They converted. The only player who really didn't live up to quote-unquote expectations for Cincinnati was Joe Mixon. Everybody else, Josh. Good heavens. Joe Burrow, 23 for 36, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. Samaje Perine led Cincinnati in rushing. He had 47 yards. Tyler Boyd, 4 catches, 5 targets, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Jamar Chase had 7 targets, 6 catches. Only had 29 yards, but he had a touchdown. Looked a little more, I won't say open, but he looked a little more available, I guess, during his routes. Probably more of a staple to the Jets defense than Joe Burrow, who's probably used to looking at him and seeing him covered at this point. T. Higgins, 7 targets, 5 catches, 93 yards. For the Jets, just a bad day in the office all the way around. Joe Flacco had his worst outing of the season. 28 for 52, 285 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They could not convert anywhere near or around the end zone. The only person who could was Greg Zuerlein. And he did have all 4 of the Jets' field goals, all 12 of the Jets' points. So you took Greg Zuerlein on your fantasy leagues. Congratulations. Breece Hall, 8 carries, 39 yards. Also had 11 targets, 6 catches, 53 yards. That was kind of helped by a small absence of Garrett Wilson. I believe he left with an injury for a little bit and then came back. I don't know the status of that. I didn't hear anything. It was just Elijah Moore and Breece Hall for a little bit. Tyler Conklin also had a very good day for a tight end, a Jets tight end, I guess. 8 catches, 8 targets, 84 yards. We're going to add him to the stream list because he just seems to be there even with CJ Uzama back. Let's see. Garrett Wilson, 10 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards. Elijah Moore, 10 targets, 4 catches, 49 yards. Another person you should probably be patient with is Elijah Moore. Flacco or Wilson, doesn't matter. He's going to get his own targets. So don't be too hesitant to move him down or move him out if you're keeping him for your flex spot or keeping him as your wide receiver 3. Like I said, Jets just kind of held Joe Mixon in check. 24 rush yards on 12 carries for Joe Mixon. But unfortunately, Joe Burrow was able to use his plethora of wide receivers and move the ball successfully. Nothing really, no real surprises for this game, I don't think. Unlike last week where I had the Jets beating the Browns or finishing close to the Browns, I didn't see this one going quite as well for the Jets, and that's kind of how it turned out. Couldn't convert. Cincinnati could. I don't have anything else. Do you?
There was something I was going to say, and now I've spaced it. The Garrett Wilson injury was, yeah, he came back in the second half and played, so nothing too crazy. It was a rib injury, and then I forgot to mention that Joe Mixon is nursing ankle injury that he basically played through the whole game and sat out part of the fourth. So something to keep an eye on there in terms of, I mean, that's partially why P. Ryan kind of led in rushing. So we'll have to see if either Mixon sits out or honestly if they do the same thing next, or I guess on Thursday. So yeah, just keep an eye on that.
Makes sense. Like I said, Cincinnati will be hosting Miami on Thursday Night Football. The Jets are traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers on Sunday. Moving on to our next football game, sorry. Texans and the Bears. These two teams went over. They were 40-point over under. And the Texans lost 20-23, so they went over the total. And that's not because the offenses were doing well. Let's just put it that way. Davis Mills, 20 for 32, 245 yards, had a touchdown, had 2 interceptions. One of them was at probably the worst time. Damian Pierce had 20 carries for 80 yards. Probably the one bright spot, I would say, for this game for the Texans. I don't think there was really anything else that was a home run. If he can get 4 yards per carry is very solid. As his longest. He was 2 for 2 on his catches for 21 yards. He did fumble twice, but we'll probably let that one slide a little more for the youth factor. You can safely probably start him in dynasty leagues if you drafted him. Rookie dynasty anyway, long season. Keeper leagues, I guess we'll say. Rex Burkhead had 3 carries for 9 yards, 4 catches out of 5 targets for 21 yards. Brandon Cooks, 2 catches, 7 targets, 22 yards. Yawn. Nico Collins, 2 catches, 4 targets, 41 yards. Yawn. Chris Moore, 3 catches. He did have 63 yards. His longest was 52. Jordan Akins was the random tight end who did things this week, who also was reported to not play at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and somehow managed to make his way onto the field. Him and Pharaoh Brown. Because I actually went to my dynasty team and I switched OJ Howard in seeing that. And was I surprised when Jordan Akins caught the touchdown? So I was like, oh, well, that's nice. On the other side, if you're talking about a Chicago game, I think I mentioned this earlier in our news and notes. I have zero interest until Chicago starts scoring and Justin Fields looks like a belonging quarterback. I have zero interest in this team fantasy wise. I'm sorry. You can keep David Montgomery. You can keep Khalil Herbert. This is the first team, I think, in 5 or 6 years of doing this that I have literally said, I do not want any part of DFS. I don't want any part of, I barely want a part of them defensively in our 53-man league. It does not look like a team that has any traction of any growth going anywhere. And I just have to, I'm just going to start standing by that. And I don't want to offend any Bears fans, but you should be more offended than I. Like it's just bad. Justin Fields, 8 for 17, 106 yards, 2 interceptions, 47 rushing yards. Khalil Herbert had a absolutely superb day, and he literally ran this team to a win. Like I don't think I'm being facetious or exaggerating when I say that. 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a 52-yard run. I'm sure that's what you want out of David Montgomery every single week. And I know it's illogical to think that you can get that. He was very, very stud-like. And if Montgomery misses any time and he is on a waiver wire, there's going to be some people fighting over him because that was, granted, he had the yards that David Montgomery should have had. The Texans are 32nd in the league in run block efficiency. They're not stopping a nosebleed, let alone a small draft coming through a door, let alone any run offense. If you see the Texans and they're on a schedule versus your running back, he should be a must start, 100%. That's why Jonathan Taylor has such a great record against him. Darnell Mooney, 2 catches out of 6 targets, 23 yards. Cole Kmet showed up to play football this week for once. 2 catches, 3 targets, 40 yards. I have nothing else to add to this game. I want to move on as quick as possible before I vomit my mouth.
Yeah, I would just add, I think Khalil Herbert is a decent grab while or if Montgomery is out. But I think that how well he played, if Montgomery comes back, I don't know if they start doing some sort of timeshare here, which hurts them both. So that's the only thing I'd say around that. Brandon Cooks
on an already horrible team.
Yeah.
On an already horrible. I mean, I don't think they're the lowest scoring team in the NFL, and that's because they've played the Texans and a rain-soaked game against the 49ers.
Yeah.
I just don't. And I don't know if maybe, well, I don't know. The Patriots had 27 points. These guys had 23, so probably didn't swap. But I want nothing to do with it. I don't. At least they scored more than the 49ers and the Broncos, which we'll also skip over later in that horrible, horrible football game that I really appreciate both teams' talent, but they both did nothing on Sunday Night Football, and I feel so sorry for the viewers that watched it. My opinion. Just going to say it. Houston is going to play the Chargers this week, which is good for Austin Eckler because we'll talk about him shortly. And Chicago traveling to the New York Giants, and the New York Giants get to play a practice game against a football team.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing I would add is Brandon Cooks. I think it's fine to keep playing him, but if he has another bad week, then you might want to reconsider. This Texans team obviously isn't great, but they've been able to at least have Brandon Cooks still be serviceable. So I don't know. That little concern there.
I would share that. I don't even know if I would drop him next week because he had the most targets through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's changed now. We know that. But he is a target hog. I don't know if I would drop him even if, but don't be surprised if he yo-yos and score. Like
Yeah.
he gave you 4.2 fantasy points in a PPR league this week. His first week, he had a touchdown and like 7 catches or something, and probably gave you 20 to 24 points. So, I mean,
Yeah. Don't jump
look
ship yet,
for
but
look for flyer options if you're gonna keep him. I wouldn't hate keeping him at least for the next week or two. In any way. Um, moving on to the next game, much more interesting. Ravens and the Patriots. Ravens win this game 37-26. Um, I mean, you watched a little more of this game than I did, being that you are the Patriots fan and I am the lowly Wosom Cowboys fan.
yeah.
So I mean, what did you see out of this game? Because I watched some highlights, but that's about all that I really took in of it. And I feel like you have a little bit more of a heads up, even when it comes to Patriots and how their offense worked, because they kept up with the Ravens for a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing here is Lamar Jackson is awesome. If if the Ravens don't sign him or figure something out, they are incredibly stupid. Um, he was the reason that they won this game, and the Pats D honestly at times looked like they had some answers for him, and then at other times it was like, oh my God, nobody can play defense against this guy. So he's just incredible. He rushed for 170 yards, which opened up the passing game, and it was just so hard for it. Like I don't know how. Like if I was a defensive coordinator, I don't see how anybody really comes up with a good game plan against Lamar Jackson. Like I said, with all his rushing yards and it opening up the passing game, like Mark Andrews did Mark Andrews things. He had 2 touchdowns. Um, I mean, Jackson had 1 touchdown, rushing touchdown himself, and then Duvernay and Josh Oliver had touchdowns. So like 4 touchdowns and an interception, 107 yards. That's just insanity from Lamar Jackson. Um, I mean, I can go through some more stats from the team here. Justice Hill actually had the most rushing yards outside of Lamar Jackson, but actually being a running back. J.K. Dobbins actually came back and was okay. We'll have to see if he gets. I mean, he's still recovering to some degree, so hopefully things get better for him. He did have 1 more carry than Justice Hill, but only had 23 yards as opposed to Justice Hill's 60 yards. And like I said, Mark Andrews had 2 touchdowns. He had 13 targets and caught 8 of them for 89 yards. Rashad Bateman, only 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 59 yards. So, I mean, sort of saved his fantasy day with all those yards, but really that's like on a PPR, that's uh, almost 8 points. So still not great. Duvernay without the touchdown wouldn't have had a great week. He caught all 2 of his targets for 25 yards. And Dobbins was a little bit involved in the passing game with 2 targets. He caught both for 17 yards.
It seems
So
like
yeah,
Mark Andrews, like going into this week, and I haven't looked at the updated stats. Going into this week, Lamar Jackson was the leading passer in the league, and it seems like Mark Andrews has like 40% of that. And if you're not starting Mark Andrews, there's a problem.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, he's like, I don't know. He's got to be the number 1 tight end right now. And
oh
he's
yeah,
ma- he's
I
making
mean the only person close to that's got to be Kelsey, and
right.
Kelsey doesn't have him in touchdowns, and then after I don't even think Kelsey. I think Kelsey might be 50 yards less than him, 30 to 50 yards less than him after the
Yeah,
games this week. But
I think
that
I
is
think
like,
coming into this week they were probably closer, but after this week I think Andrews is way ahead. But he's making the case for him and all of these other running backs, top end running backs, not playing well. He's making the case for why it actually pays off sometimes to take a tight end in the first round, which is not something I necessarily like to do, but this season it's paying off. Um,
right.
on the other side of the ball, the Patriots actually looked like a good, or I won't say good, but a pretty decent offense. They kept up with these guys for a good amount of the game. Um, Mac Jones looked pretty good, other than he had 3 interceptions, one of which was just like throwing into traffic, not ideal. I'm not remembering the second, and then there was one late in the game where he's just trying to make something happen and throws it into the end zone, sort of a back corner jump ball, but the wide receiver took the sort of the I don't know what you would call it. He didn't go to the back corner, and the safety did, so the safety caught it. But aside from that, he had 321 yards. He was 22 catches on 32 attempts. He actually looked pretty decent. Just like I said, a couple of bonehead mistakes. Ramondre Steven and Damian Harris, 50-50 split. Ramondre had 12 carries. Damian Harris had 11. But Ramondre Steven had 73 yards. Damian Harris only had 41. They each had a touchdown. And Mac Jones, actually, I forgot about this. He had a couple of breakaway runs. He had 31 yards on 5 carries and ran in a touchdown himself. Those were their only 3 scores, were all those rushing attempts. But Mac Jones and Devontae Parker were lighting it up as far as like from a Patriots perspective. Devontae Parker caught 5 of his 10 targets. Obviously, I'd like to see a little bit of a better completion percentage there, but they were a lot of long balls. He had 156 yards. So that you like to see that, especially with Myers out, and honestly with them paying to have Parker come there. Kendrick Bourne also stepped it up, caught 4 of his 5 targets for 58 yards. Nelson Aguilar sprinkled in a little bit. Two of his 3 targets he caught for 41 yards. He had that one breakaway catch later in the game that honestly could have put them back in this, but the defense was able to pop it out, which turned into a fumble that was lost. So that was unfortunate and kind of sealed it for the Ravens. Not too much else really worth mentioning. I guess Ramondre Stevens involved in the passing game. Jono Smith kind of finally shows up, but that's about it.
It's interesting to note Devontae Parker at 156 yards, and he was the wide receiver 3 in yardage.
On the week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would not, I mean, and there were so many, like, we'll talk about it more a little bit more later, but Olave had 147, not above him. Mac Hollins, 158.
Yeah.
In Hunter Renfro's place.
Hats off to
and
you
then
on Hollins.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a feeling. And then who's Devontae Smith? 160.
Yeah. Phenomenal game, Devontae Smith.
800. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I don't have anything else to add to this. Well done on the review. I think the Ravens are onto something as far as this team makeup. I think Lamar Jackson has a lot to prove, and now I'm interested to see exactly what New England does to fix this, because Mac Jones will likely be out for upwards of a month. So
yeah, but we'll see how Baltimore does against Buffalo next week. New England against Green Bay.
Big test.
Honestly, against Green Bay, maybe they have a chance with Hoyer playing. Who knows?
That's
just
right.
Because of the offensive weapons on Green Bay. But anyways.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to take part 1 and we're going to put it down. On the other side, we'll continue our week 3 review, and stay tuned. We'll be back on the Fantasy Flyer.
Bye. Have a great time.
And welcome back, part 2 of the Fantasy Flyer, your week 3 review show here on Tuesday, going through all of the games. We're going to pick it right back up with the Chiefs and the Colts. I don't think I'm stepping out of bounds when I say I didn't expect the Colts to be anywhere close to the Chiefs this week. I don't think that's that was the case. Mahomes was kind of held in check. there was no run game for the Chiefs. I mean, there really wasn't one. I mean, there was a decent one, I guess. We'll say a mediocre to average one. But there was nothing. Mahomes led the team in rushing yards at 26 yards on scrambles. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 7 carries for a whopping bagel, 0 yards. Jerick McKinnon outsnapped Clyde Edwards. Didn't see the pass game work, so Clyde Edwards had a better fantasy day. But Matt Ryan kind of stabilized the offense. I know, like I was talking in the pre-show meeting to you, the Chiefs blitzed a really good amount just throughout the game. But they tried to pressure Matt Ryan. The offensive line for the Colts is very, very bad.
Block. Then you pull up your pants.
Yeah, John Madden said it best. So they just kept getting run over. Mahomes took up responsibility for the offense struggling, but Matt Ryan was able to take advantage the other way and kind of keep the pressure on. So I feel like it was a little bit of the defense surprised. Well, both were surprised, I guess. I don't know. Matt Ryan did a fantastic job for not having the greatest of tools around him. JT wasn't exactly lighting it up, but Matt was able to stay focused. Made passes. I think it was 27 for 37.
Mm-hmm.
Very solid. But again, if the blocking stays an issue, I mean, Matt Ryan has 7 fumbles through 3 games, which is a lot. The most since Michael Vick, I believe, in 2000, and I don't even know. A long time for that many amount of fumbles in 3 games. And he is as immobile as they come. So if that O-line cannot hold their ground, it's going to be a long year for Colts and the Colts fans. Travis Kelce was great as usual. But other than that, Juju, 5 catches for 89 yards.
89 yards, yep.
5 catches, 89 yards, 8 targets. Travis Kelce, 4 receptions on 8 targets, 58 yards. He did have the touchdown, which was not a touchdown. I don't know if you saw that play, but
I did not.
I think the refs just got tired of debating it and called it a touchdown. His knee was down, and there was no part of the ball that was across the plane.
Yeah.
I don't know. Go back and watch it if you're interested in getting mad at referees.
That
like I said,
happens
Clyde
too
Edwards.
often to me.
Oh my God, they are so bad. They are just
suck.
Yeah, they are the worst. I mean, just absolutely, it was bad. I don't know. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like I said, 5 catches on his 5 targets, 39 yards. Jonathan Taylor had 71 yards rushing, 3 catches, 20 yards. Meh. Obviously, you're not getting rid of him. It's Jonathan Taylor. It's just a stretch of 2 bleh games. He'll bounce back, but you can already kind of tell he's going to regress from the greatness we saw last year. Michael Pittman, 8 catches, 9 targets, 72 yards. The rookie Alec Pierce, welcome back. 3 catches on 5 targets, 61 yards. I think Pierce is the clear 2 here. And I think that has to kind of be established for Matt Ryan, because going from who's my Tua, is it Nyheim Hines? Is it Stratch, whatever, Ashton Doolin? Is it Alec Pierce? Pierce seemed to kind of fill that role immediately after missing those 2 games. So I'm going with Pierce as the 2. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. There was talk in the preseason about Paris Campbell, but that dude has not been able to stay healthy, and I don't know if that's continuing to be the case or if he's just not turning out to be what they expected. So yeah, Pierce seems to be the number 2.
It's good news for my dynasty team because I drafted him in the 2nd round, which was probably too high, but I wanted him. I had a feeling I was going to end up with Ryan when we did the draft, and I was right. Almost had Rodgers, but I had to go with Ryan instead. Yeah, Kansas City going to have, like we talked about earlier, Kansas City going to have that game where they travel to somewhere in the South, wherever the Buccaneers, whatever parking lot they want to host this football game that's not in the way of a hurricane.
They just need like a floating field that they can just put out there in the ocean or something.
I don't think that's going to work out too well.
You just got to stay right in the eye of the hurricane the whole time. It'll work.
Okay.
Trust me, it'll work.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Next up, Kansas City will, like I said, will be in Tampa Bay. That is Sunday Night Football, so which will be an interesting game wherever they do host it. Indiana will be at home facing the Titans in the first interdivisional matchup. Can't wait to see that barn burner because neither one of those teams look great. Even with both of them winning this week. Anything else you got to add to that one, or am I pretty safe in saying that? I would say that's an outlier game for the Chiefs. I don't think the Chiefs, if you play that game 10 more times, they'll probably win all 10.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is in true Patriots form, if other teams want to take this on, if you rule out Travis Kelce, then the Chiefs are going to have some troubles. And it's not that he's
Yeah.
completely ruled out, but he only had 58 yards in that one touchdown. Like he usually has, I would say, upwards of 80 plus yards.
Well, to be fair, that is 20% of Mahomes' catches. And he did have 20% of his targets. So Mahomes was 20 for 35, 262 yards, touchdown. He had an interception late. And like I said, he led the team on 26 rush yards. So, I mean, you didn't really, quote, rule him out. I think I pointed out in Thursday's show that Juju had a matchup that was going to be taken advantage of. And yeah, I was right for what it was. And then the tight ends just aren't guarded by Indianapolis. The irony in that is that Jelani Woods had 2 touchdowns for Indianapolis, both touchdowns. Points to the rookie. I think if you drafted Jelani Woods in your dynasty league, your keeper league, like there were some in ours, you can look at him. Honestly, you can look at him even in leagues if you have a stretch for the tight end position. Like you said, we've said many times, tight ends can be a crapshoot if it's not Waller, Kelce, Kittle, Andrews. If it's not any of those, you may run into that option that Jelani Woods wouldn't be horrible. I know he only had the 2 targets and they were both touchdowns, or maybe it was 3 targets and he had 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. But if that continues next week, he may very quickly climb waiver wires. Moving on to the next game, Raiders at the Titans, the aforementioned Titans. Robert Woods and Derrick Henry both had a solid game, finally. Robert Woods had 4 catches for 85 yards. Is that right? Yeah, nine targets, and all 4 of his catches were in the first probably 20 minutes of the game. Because the first time I checked the stats, I think it was 2:00, and he had 4 for 85, and I was like, all right, here comes Robert Woods, and then he did nothing. It was just the worst. But Derrick Henry, I think, is the real noteworthy improvement for this game. He needed a breakout game to get him back on track. And the best part for him is it didn't just happen on the ground,
right?
Where he was able. He had over 4 yards of carry. He had a touchdown. He had 5 catches for 58 yards. And his fantasy day, he had a very good fantasy day for the Derrick Henry owners who had been so down on themselves. I mean, you probably picked this game where you were like, all right, he's going to do something because Las Vegas, I mean, they let the Cardinals come back from 20 points down in the 4th quarter last week. They haven't really put up a defensive fight in a lot of different places this year. So why not? But for Derrick Henry to actually take advantage of it and then to see the other people around him flourish. Like I said, Robert Woods had that big game. Nick Westbrook-Akina, 3 for 3, 3 catches, 3 targets, had 40 yards. Very solid as the wide receiver 3. It is a little disappointing to see that Treylon Burks only had 1 catch for 2 yards for 13, 1 catch for 2 targets for 13 yards. But I can definitely tell you from watching a couple of the highlights that he was who they thought they had to stop, and they were wrong. I to the credit what we just talked about with Derrick Henry is it didn't seem like himself. They did not have Taylor Lewan, who was going to be out for a little while. I think I mentioned that on last Tuesday's show when he got injured against the Bills, and he is a crucial part for that offensive line and for pushing the line for Derrick Henry and seeing the field. And you saw it happen last week where Derrick Henry missed a lot of steps after that happened. Well, I'm assuming practice went well, or maybe it's just Derrick Henry because he's 260 pounds and is a beast. But he was able to rebound exceptionally well, and I think Tannehill 19 for 27, 264 yards, one touchdown. Who was that touchdown to anyway? Was that Hilliard?
No, Swaim, Geoff Swaim.
Jeff Swain? No
Is
kidding.
it Jeff?
It is Jeff.
Okay.
It is Jeff Swain.
I always say Geoff.
Yeah, I know he had 3 catches, but I did not know he had the touchdown. So that's good. I'm still not putting him on my waiver wire, but that's good. For Las Vegas, their defense actually stepped up in the second half because they were down 24-13, I believe, at halftime. The Titans took away Adams a lot, and especially in the red zone, they took away Waller. Waller did not have many targets compared to normal, and he also didn't have any many yards. 3 catches, 5 targets, 22 yards. Foster Moreau, 3 catches, 5 targets, 44 yards. I'm starting to throw him in my flex not flex conversation, but in my waiver conversation. That's what I meant to say. Because he's slowly seen production the last few weeks. I'm going to look it up right now, but I'm going to bet that he's probably seen 40% of snaps. Yeah, even more. Last 2 weeks, 61% and 50% of snaps. And obviously they haven't just been blocking. So I put Foster Moreau on my waiver wire. If you're in the Jelani Woods category where I just need a tight end, I don't think there's really a lot of injuries, but that's somebody who I might be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play week 1, so he's only played the past 2 weeks, and he's had 9 targets in those 2 weeks.
That'll do it. I have him playing 18 snaps in week 1.
Really?
Interesting. Yeah. Either way, I mean,
I guess
Darren Waller had this.
They just didn't target him at all, I guess. Then he had 0
Darren Waller
targets.
Well, I mean, 9 in the last 2 weeks is still sufficient for if it keeps up. I would want to go one more week until I really lock him into a waiver, but in a stretch, that's not bad. Adams, 5 catches, 10 targets, 36 yards. He did have a touchdown, which once again saved his fantasy day. I think we talked about it last week where he had, 7 targets, but 2 catches, and one of them was a touchdown. It doesn't seem like he's creating the space that he was in Green Bay. I don't know if I don't think it's quarterback. I don't know if it's not, I don't know. I don't have any real explanation for it from what I've seen. But when there isn't a Waller or an Adams to catch a football, it seems like Mac Hollins will.
Especially with Renfro out, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's who he's been filling in for the most part. Mac Hollins, 8 catches, 10 targets, 158 yards. He had the touchdown to put them within 2 points, which was very clutch. Caught it in the back of the end zone. And he even threw a pass for 4 yards.
Yeah.
So not half bad. Josh Jacobs, 13 rushes for 66 yards, 5 catches, 6 targets, 31 yards in the air, helping out his fantasy day because he hasn't exactly been thrilling this year either. It seems like this Raiders team has really turned to the rush to kind of try and keep the defense on its toes and not so much use it strategically, which almost can be the same thing, but it doesn't really sound like it is. I don't know. Josh Jacobs can still be started. I just don't have a lot of his ceiling is getting lower, especially when you have Adams who's held back, Waller who's held back, and it's not Jacobs who gets anything other than a couple of spare checkdowns. It's Mac Hollins who goes for a crazy amount of yards and is the one that they put their attention on. Derek Carr, 26 for 44, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He scrambled for 17 yards. That what I would expect from Derek Carr. It was a solid football game. Good to see Tennessee finally get a win. The Raiders, and also bringing this up because we've talked about 2 or 3 of them. We've talked about 2 of them, but we'll say it now. That AFC West that everyone said was going to be so tough does not look so tough. I mean, we'll call it down the middle. Las Vegas is 0-3. The Chiefs, I think Chiefs are 2-1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chiefs are 2-1, so that's not half bad. But the Broncos we're going to talk about that, but I'll spoil it. They won by a point to the 49ers. And the Chargers, which we're going to talk about briefly, got walloped by the Jaguars. It doesn't look like that AFC West is all it's cracked up to be this year. Granted, 3 games, plenty of time, teams turn it around, but this is not a very interesting start for those teams. So, Raiders take on the aforementioned Broncos next week. So it doesn't get better for one of them. And Tennessee, they will travel to Indiana to take on the Colts. Anything else you got for this one?
No, honestly. Hopefully better days ahead for Burks. Derrick Henry, hopefully he keeps this up. Dontrell Hilliard still seems like he's kind of a part of the plan, but definitely not as involved as he was week 1.
He's the RB. He's the RB2. There's no if Henry was to go down with an injury, he would be the number 1 waiver pickup, hands down, that week.
Yeah.
If he went down this week, if Henry went down this week with Montgomery, and the games turned out the exact same, I would still go for Hilliard over Khalil Herbert.
Oh, interesting.
That's how much. Yeah. Well, Titans are first off, they're better at scoring. They're better at passing. They're a better run offense. What else do you need?
I mean,
unless it's literally
first 2 weeks they were, but I think I would go Herbert.
Well, okay, that's fair. I'll give you that one. All right.
I think I would go Herbert just based on their individual talent, but I definitely see what you're saying about the teams because the Bears are horrendous. But I think even with Henry there, Hilliard is going to be involved in the passing game. Henry is not a pass catching back, despite the fact that he had 5 catches on 6 targets. He bobbled a couple of them and actually was able to get them, but he is not a great pass catcher.
And yet he had
I know.
all of those catches.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Cardi B said it best. All right, moving on to the second of our host v host games. We didn't even tally up the first one, so let's take a step back and do that one because I completely missed that for week 3. So let me grab the magical pen of doom from over here. So we both picked Buffalo to win that game, and so we both get 0 points. Lovely. Easy way to catch up. To the second game, Minnesota and Detroit. This was not this, but Jared Goff was the subject of my first security check, facebook.com/thefantasyflyer. And how he's getting a little overrated for his improvement. He has improved, and it showed in this game. And I'm even going to take a little bit of a step back from the opinions that I posted on that page. He did throw an interception, which I predicted. He was held. Actually, I say he was held less than 275 yards. He hadn't had a game that high this year, which I was so astutely corrected upon last night when I shared it with one of our 53 mates. So, but he also crumbled under pressure when it was applied. So, and the team didn't do quite as well when that started to happen. And that's kind of how the Vikings ended up coming back to win this game. The O-line was solid to start off. St. Brown was getting catches to start. Detroit opened on 3 straight scoring opportunities, touchdown on 2 of them. They missed a field goal in the 3rd one. So they were moving up the field, doing well. The reports coming into the game had stated that DeAndre Swift would be more involved. And I don't know if they really didn't think that he would benefit or if they wanted to be playing on the safe side. But he was out-snapped by Jamal Williams by a mile. Mm-hmm. And I'm officially putting Jamal Williams on my waiver report. If he was to go, if I'm down a running back or if I am down a flex, I'll consider it. Because it seems like, especially in the red zone, Jamal Williams is the guy.
Yeah, which is what we said week 1, that it seems like that might be the case.
Yeah, and I would say suspicions are confirmed, not even for the fact that he outsnapped him, but literally where he took the ball. The Vikings were not really out of the game at any point, though. Justin Jefferson very much held in tow. I think I mentioned it here. I may not have, and I may be imagining things. Adam Thielen had not gone 3 games in a row without a touchdown since 2019.
You did say that.
And yep, okay, good, because he caught a touchdown. Mm-hmm. He had 6 for 61 on 8 targets. He had the touchdown. The other one who I think is very solidly the wide receiver 3 is KJ Osborne. I believe over the last 2 weeks, I'll double check my math, but I believe he's seen like 60% of snaps each game. He's been very, very good when you can't find Justin Jefferson. Oh, even better, 77 and 75% snaps. So he's the wide receiver 3 by a mile. Jalen Rager has not and will not probably ever step him. It is interesting to see that Jalen Rager and Justin Jefferson are on the same team. That's been such a controversial. Oh, the Eagles picked Rager over Jefferson, and Rager's like, "Oh, I'll go join him."
Yeah.
But Osborne had the the go-ahead touchdown. The Lions had an opportunity to get back into it. And that was where the pressure came, and Goff started throwing. Well, he threw an interception. But I have much more faith in Goff being a top, I'll say 12 quarterback this year. This was his first real test. Like I said, I think the Packers and the Cowboys in a few weeks will be different, especially when you get to Thanksgiving, and I'm pretty sure they play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving because that seems to be an annual thing now. But yeah, I have a lot of faith in the Lions still being a very improved team all around. Goff 25 for 41, 277 yards, a touchdown, did have that interception. Williams 20 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown 6 catches on 9 targets for 73 yards. His consecutive streak of a touchdown in a game is snapped. And I don't know if that was Minnesota's goal, but it worked, especially without Harrison Smith. They did a fantastic job in the secondary. Josh Reynolds picked up the slack when they started to overcover on Amon-Ra. He had 6 catches on 10 targets for 96 yards. For Minnesota, Cousins 24 for 41, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns. Slight difference I want to point out there. Cousins and Goff both threw 41 passes, 260 for Cousins to 277 for Goff. Cousins, a little shorter throws, a little bit. And he had 2 touchdowns. Doesn't really mean much. Cousins is kind of that 250 and 2 guy all the way around.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook, 17 carries, 96 yards, and a touchdown. And he did all of that in the first, we'll say 40 minutes of the game. I think he left in the third. I might have the wrong, maybe I'm a little too early, but he left with a shoulder injury. See how that affects the game this week. Justin Jefferson, 6 targets, 3 catches, 14 yards. Not really, another one where you're not going to let him go, but dang, that sucks.
Yeah.
For your fantasy
Especially
team.
2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, back-to-back stinkers for him. But just based on what we've talked about Jamar Chase already through 3 weeks. Not really up to last year. Jalen Waddle is kind of right there, but that's even with Tyreek Hill. He hasn't really taken another step up. He's kind of limited. Justin Jefferson now we're seeing get really, I don't even know how to say flustered, but he's covered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of these guys, well, it's not even a think. Everybody, we all know this. You hold out because they're all amazing wide receivers, but it's a common thing. It's happening. So even A.J. Brown was held somewhat in check. I mean, there's another wide receiver who went off in Philadelphia, but there's the big names are the targets of defenses, it seems. So Detroit will stay home. They will go home to host the Seattle Seahawks. Minnesota will travel to the Superdome to take on the Saints. Anything else you got for this one?
Yeah. So,
I object.
you object. Well, sorry, I had my train of thought. So, correction, we were wrong. Detroit Lions actually play Buffalo on Thanksgiving, and Dallas actually plays the New York Giants. But as far as this game goes,
Why?
I don't know. That is
That's
kind of
what it is.
funky.
They both
But-
play on Thanksgiving, so at least we got that.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly what you want to see in terms of the Vikings bouncing back from a horrendous week. They actually spread the ball around really, really well. Dalvin played really well, which you called.
Up until he got hurt.
Yeah, up until he got hurt, exactly. But and Madison, as we've always seen, did very well when Cook was out. So they'll
Did he
be
have a
fine.
touchdown?
He did, yeah.
I thought so because I thought I watched the play and he was, I mean, yeah, he scored it, and I remember thinking to myself, he's not going to be a Viking by the trade deadline. Somebody's got to
right?
go after him because
But
he broke like 4 tackles from like the 15-yard line and spun his way in with like some jujitsu yoga crap. And I was
yeah,
like, good for you. Good
I
for you.
mean, I think it was preseason. There was talks of I think he himself wanted to be traded. So he definitely wants to be more involved. Obviously, he's a good player. He could potentially be a number one elsewhere, but for the Vikings' sake, obviously they should want to keep him around with Cook's injuries, and the fact that he can fill in very nicely. But yeah, just going back to the fact that the Vikings bounced back nicely here. They spread the ball around well, and did fine without Justin Jefferson being as involved as he normally and probably should be. But targets like 8 and 8 for Osborne and Thielen, 6 for Irv, and 6 for Jefferson. So definitely spread the ball around nicely there. And then the Detroit Lions are still putting up okay amount of points. Obviously, it ebbs and flows with the opposing defenses. Like the Vikings are supposed to be a decent defense. They haven't necessarily shown that so far, but
Right.
this honestly is kind of exactly how you would have expected this game to go, other than honestly maybe the Lions playing a bit better than last season. So the Lions seem to be for real so far through 3 weeks, and their record doesn't necessarily reflect it, but they're in these games. So hopefully, I don't know how, like, I guess their future is in a better spot. So like, yeah, maybe next season with Jameson Williams,
Right.
and Goff continuing to trend upwards.
Upward.
Yeah, they look better next year. We talked about it at the top of the show, but Josh Reynolds injured, Amon-Ra possibly injured. Interesting that DJ Chark wasn't as involved as he has been.
He seems
Crazy
to be
that,
like an average 4 to 6 target guy. I
yeah,
think he had, what did he have here? 4?
six targets, 3 catches.
6 targets.
The crazy
So, I
thing is
mean,
that Reynolds had 96 yards, 10 targets. Not really sure where that came from, but if he's hurt, then maybe Chark
you know
gets
what it is?
involved again.
I wouldn't even say what it is. It's not like I know. I don't work with Dan Campbell. But Josh Reynolds was there last year.
He
knows
was,
the
yeah.
offense. He knows the offense. So I think it's a little bit more of a Goff, Dan Campbell, even Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. It's a little bit of a trust that they have in Josh Reynolds. Also, I would venture to guess he's probably faster than DJ Chark. Venture.
Probably.
I would think he's got a little bit more speed. And I think we've said it before, Jared Goff doesn't throw deep. So it's the yak. If you get yak, it's good. So that's just all of what I've, like, some things that I just pulled out of the air that makes the most sense to me.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I got on this game.
Moving to a game that was a lot farther apart than score shows. Eagles 24. They went to Washington and made sure Washington fans left early and beat the traffic. Eagles came out firing. I mean, Devontae Smith. This game is Devontae Smith versus the Commanders. He could not be stopped. Most yards in a game by a wide receiver this season: 169 yards, touchdown, 12 targets, 8 catches. Almost half of Jalen Hurts' yards. Hurts 22 for 35, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. He didn't even rush the ball an amazing amount. But he kind of took a step back and used his arm very well this week. A third game in a row, Washington just cannot get their offense moving. I don't know how many first downs they had in the first half, but it wasn't a lot. Once again, it didn't really get better in the second half, but if you get off to slow starts and you play from behind the 8 ball, one, you're ruling a lot of work out for Antonio Gibson, which for his health is probably a good thing, but he's not. I mean, I would not be surprised to see them start going to Brian Robinson, a fair amount when he gets healthy. Spoiler alert, he's practicing already. Got shot in the knee 3 weeks ago, and he's on a practice field, so good for him. Good to see him back. And Wentz had his worst game this year, 25 for 43, 211 yards. Garbage time TD saved Antonio Gibson's fantasy day for the second week in a row. McKissick outsnapped Gibson. I am wholeheartedly more interested in McKissick in this passing game than I am with Gibson in the running game. And I don't think the game script is really going to change that a whole heck of a lot. But, I'd like to see the Commanders play with a 2-touchdown lead before I guess I really sew that one up. If any of Washington's wide receivers are on your waiver wire in a league, you need to pick them up. As they are all flex options on any given week. All three have seen 80% snap counts in all 3 games, and that's Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and Terry McLaurin. It is a 3-headed monster, and that's it. There's no Cam Sims. Even Lance Thomas is starting to fall back into an actual like blocking tight end role because he just can't find Logan. I said Lance. Logan Thomas is not. That's how little we've mentioned him so far. His name has changed. And Washington O-line had allowed 9 sacks in this game. Oh my sweet Jesus! Hassan Reddick had a sack and a half. Fletcher Cox had a sack. T.J. Edwards had a sack. I mean, basically, the defensive coach for the Eagles had a sack. Like, there were so many
Brandon Graham.
Brandon Graham, yeah. And this was another one where they had an insane amount of tackles, which is just, it is what it is.
Nine total sacks though. That's insane. They were really
Right.
disrupting Carson Wentz.
And again, Wentz isn't mobile. He's not. He's not a Marcus Mariota. He's not a Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he's not any one of the mobile ones. But 9 sacks is, I mean, probably a really good defensive call versus a really bad offensive structure. McLaurin 6 catches, 102 yards on 9 targets. Curtis Samuel 7 catches on 10 targets for 48 yards. Jahan Dotson 8 targets, only had 2 catches for 10 yards. But the most important thing I'm looking at there is the targets. He's still getting the ball thrown to him. Eventually, that's going to work its way into his numbers even more effectively and more frequently. We talked about Devontae Smith, who you could have thrown a cinder block at him and he would have caught it. A.J. Brown, 10 targets, 5 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said, with Justin Jefferson, not like A.J. Brown has had the same last 2 games as Justin Jefferson statistics-wise, but A.J. Brown, even if he has a bad game, be patient. Like, this offense is going to rotate through the strengths, and it's either going to be wide receivers and sometimes Devontae Smith. In my opinion, Devontae Smith needed this breakout game to not only solidify himself as a number 2, to give that hierarchy of the offense and make sure he knows his place versus everyone, but to show the team that he can be the A.J. Brown in the future if A.J. Brown gets hurt, or if, like in this case, he's guarded very well, or, I mean, 5 out of 10 isn't horrible, and he still had a touchdown and still had 85 yards and XYZ, but Devontae Smith went absolutely off. So Dallas Goedert, 3 catches, 4 targets, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Philadelphia is up against Jacksonville. I really like that matchup next week. I want to see what Jacksonville can do because we'll talk about them in a little bit, and they played very well. Philadelphia has been playing very well. Washington travels to Dallas so that they can play 1 good quarter of football after playing 3 bad ones. Anything else from you?
I mean, 2 good weeks from Devontae Smith in a row. Obviously, this one crazy good, but after that week 1, I don't know if he had a goose, but he had 0 catches, so I don't really know how he didn't have a goose.
Wasn't well. Didn't go well.
But so yeah, 2 good weeks in a row. You like to see that. Seems like the Eagles really have things figured out. They definitely were stifled, to your point, in the running game. With Hurts not really running, Miles Sanders not getting much going, nobody able to do much on the ground. So it seems like Washington's run defense is decent, but you can't. That doesn't mean much if you can't guard the backfield. So
Right.
Washington, I would still say is a decent defense, but if their offense is not getting points on the board, then that doesn't mean too much. Carson Wentz, I think he bounces back, but this is unfortunately what we've seen from Wentz in the past, where he just falls apart. So we'll have to see what happens here. But also to your point about the receiving core, 9 targets for McLaurin, 10 targets for Curtis Samuel, 8 targets for Jahan Dawson. That you love to see that. Any of these guys are serviceable. They might not all have great weeks every week, but at least 2 of them seem to be having decent weeks every week. Curtis Samuel, I would say, might be a little more stable because he's involved in the running game a little bit.
Right.
But yeah.
All right. I'm going to real quick go through. I'm actually going to skip a couple games. We're going to go through the Sunday Night Football game really quick because there isn't a lot to talk about. 49ers lost to the Broncos 10-11. There was a lot of defense. Russell and Jimmy, below average performances for both. Russell especially. Broncos were forced to punt 10 times. And, I mean, that shows because I think the 49ers had 80-some tackles. And Russell Wilson was sacked 4 times. There was no good QB accuracy from what it seemed like. Cortland Sutton was like the only player who was worth anything out of this. George Kittle, good to see him come back, make some plays, run some routes very well. He got open probably a bit more than Jimmy G recognized, but that's okay because I think that's only going to go up, next week and so on. I don't even have the stats aren't even that impressive, so I didn't even write them down.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
the most impressive thing about this football game was the safety that he stepped out of bounds for, and when that's the most notable thing, we got a problem.
Yeah, in 1 week we had a butt punt and a walk out of the back of the end zone safety. So that was weird and unfortunate for those guys, but obviously different games. The defenses definitely were a big part of this game, but on top of that, just poor offensive play across the board. Denver has really got to figure something out. The fact that they are 2-1 is kind
crazy.
of, yeah, it's ridiculous. They should be on paper significantly better. I don't know what the heck's going on. Javonte and Melvin still in a 50-50 share. Javonte a little bit more. Actually, he wasn't. I was going to say a little bit more involved in the passing game, but he wasn't this game. He had a few more carries. It seems to flip-flop who has more carries and who has more
Game script. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you even say about it?
Right, and then whoever's on the field for the end zone. It's just game script
It's a
for
mess.
those guys. Judy hopefully trending or will be better. He's coming off of that injury. Really the only thing worth watching in this game was the last handful of minutes when Russ was actually Russell Wilson again, and he scrambled around and made some plays happen. Hopefully they watch this tape and say, why are we not doing things that allow this to happen? Because they've been awful through 3 games.
Absolutely atrocious. They've won by a touchdown and lost by a point and won by a point.
Yeah.
So I'd say the defense is very good. That seems to be the consistent. Jeff Wilson, still very serviceable. Play him. Brandon Ayuk had the touchdown for San Francisco. Debo, be patient. And I have nothing else.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a little break here, and we will be back for part. And welcome back to part 3 of the Fantasy Flyer. We're going to keep going with our week 3 review. Saints traveled to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Panthers end up winning this game 22-14. Seems like the Saints have offensive identity issues. I mean, Alvin Kamara came back. He had an okay rushing game. Also had some good pass catching. Chris Olave is the wide receiver 1. He's just going to get so many targets, and especially the deep balls, like we talked about on Tuesday or on Thursday, Friday, whatever day we had our little show. Michael Thomas is not running 2 quarterbacks anymore. I think he's still caught like 88 or 90% of his passes this year. He was 5 for 5 in this game. Olave had 13 targets, caught what, 9? Yep, for 147 yards. So Olave's a must start. Thomas is not a bad wide receiver by any means. Landry's there to fill the gaps. Traquan Smith did a good job filling holes in zone coverages, and he picked up a lot of the midfield yards. It is a good bailout option for Jameis Winston. On the other side, Baker Mayfield was not stellar, but he made some plays when they were needed. DJ Moore led the team in targets, but the bench dwellers kind of got the yard. Laviska Shenault, 2 catches, 90 yards. Shi Smith, 2 catches, 22 yards. No one else had more than 2 catches, if you haven't caught that drift. Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore combined for 10 targets, 2 catches between them, and 16 yards combined. Robbie Anderson, I'm okay with you searching around. Like I'm your parents. I wouldn't mind. Right, like you can't borrow the car, you can't go see your girlfriend, be home by 9. Anderson, like a feeler for someone else. If there's a higher ceiling for someone else, it's probably worth investing in at some point. Laviska Shenault has much more to do than to earn my fantasy trust for 2
Yeah.
catches, 90 yards. Kamara, 61 rush yards, 2 catches, 12 yards, had 7 targets. Michael Thomas, 5 catches, 5 targets, 49 yards. Jameis Winston was 25 for 41, 353 yards, had a touchdown, and his average, Jameis Winston, 2 interceptions. Baker Mayfield took care of the football, 12 for 25, 1 touchdown, 170 yards, but not really a. There's got to be a better quarterback somewhere in your league, I'd say, for points. I mean, I think that's, 170 standard scoring for quarterback. You're looking at 425. It's what, 12 points right there? Yeah, I want to say 12.
Yeah.
14 maybe, something like that. Yeah, you can find something better in your waiver wire. New Orleans will host Minnesota this weekend. Carolina will host Arizona. And I have nothing else to add to this game. Interesting to see how the Saints are going to change. The Panthers just need to keep getting better and keep making strides.
I can't believe the Panthers won this game, but
Jameis is playing hurt.
Yeah.
I know. I don't want to, I don't want to lay it on that, but that's where I'm going with it.
I mean, similar to and I hate to make this comparison, but Buffalo Miami game, the Saints had 353 passing yards versus 170 for the Panthers. I think the biggest difference, obviously, McCaffrey had 108 rushing yards.
How could I forget? How could I forget Christian McCaffrey, who's been a fantasy cellar dweller so far this year?
Yeah.
He's slowly returning to his mid-season form.
Yeah, he's got to get more targets, though. You like to see that he's actually getting a good amount of rushing attempts and yards, but he only had 4 targets again and only caught 2 of them for 7 yards. So yeah, interesting. And I did have a stat, but I'm not remembering it. I think there was something along the lines of Chris Olave and him doing something as a rookie, and Traquan Smith was the last rookie to also do it. I'll have to see if I can dig it up, but we can move on.
It's very, very inspecific.
Yeah.
Just being honest.
No.
Yeah. Chris Olave playing. That's all I got to add to that. Next one up, Jaguars at the Chargers. This game was over quick. Not over. That's a lie. But Jaguars win 38-10. They had the upper hand early on. Justin Herbert had to move, which probably caused him a little irritation with his rib cartilage injury. He turned down a shot to his ribs before the game. And according to reports, the medical staff's retort was, "Why do you want to play then?" And he was like, "Because football." So he didn't play bad. 25 for 45, 297 yards, had a touchdown, had an interception. Okay day's work. Austin Eckler, be patient. He plays Houston this week, so give it time. We see what Houston allows to Khalil Herbert. Imagine what he'll do if they put the ball in Austin Eckler's hands. He did see plenty of receiving work, however. 4 carries for 5 yards, but he had 8 catches, 8 targets, 48 yards. Saved his fantasy day. So Mike Williams, only 1 catch for a touchdown. I'm sure 8.5 points would probably not make you happy as a Mike Williams fan when Keenan Allen is out. So no real winners for the Chargers as far as picking up that slack. Josh Palmer had 9 targets, 6 catches, 99 yards. But the real winner, well, obviously the winner of the football game because, scores. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, they look different. Like we talked about it, they're quietly one of the top 10 offenses, probably top 7 offenses in the league. Zay Jones finally showed what he can do when you throw the ball to him, 10 times plus 3 games in a row. 10 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Christian Kirk had 9 targets, 6 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. James Robinson ran for 100 yards on 17 carries, had a touchdown, 3 catches, 16 yards. Very good fantasy day. Travis Etienne is as droppable, I think, as he's ever been. So sorry. Doesn't seem to be getting red zone targets. Doesn't seem to be getting much of the rushes. He gets a couple catches, but so does Robinson. So Marvin Jones Jr., 4 catches, 7 targets, 33 yards, and a touchdown. Jaguars just looked good. I mean, Lawrence is spreading the ball. He's looking confident in the pocket. Jacksonville had defensively only had 1 sack, but they had 9 pass deflections, and it's just good to see the Jaguars be the team that they should have been. I don't know where it was, but the Jaguars, who's their head coach? I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
I don't know either. I'll look it up.
Doug Peterson.
Yes.
I just had to Google it. He has won 2 games and is already tied for 5th in franchise history in wins. So that should show you where the Jaguars have not been and where they are right now. So Jacksonville and Philadelphia this week. Chargers in Houston. I will spoil Friday's show a little bit for everybody. Start Christian Kirk, start Zay Jones. Definitely start Austin Eckler. If Keenan Allen is back, start him. There we go. Anything else from you?
I mean, ETN, yeah, unfortunate, but he did have his best fantasy week yet. James Robinson looks awesome even after it was an Achilles, right?
Everybody had their best fantasy week for Jacksonville.
Yeah,
So just want to point that out.
that's fair.
Okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not. He's not seeing the snaps that I would like out of him to be. I mean, okay, it's week 3 again, and I'll say this probably until week 5 or week 6. I'll go with the but it's week whatever.
I mean,
that's
this is
fine.
essentially his rookie season, right? So if you think of it from that perspective, maybe it's not the worst. He had 13 carries compared to Robinson's 17. Granted, he only got 45
He
yards
did
on
less.
him.
Yeah, he did less with them. He did.
Um,
Okay, he had more snaps than I thought. He played 43% of snaps. I thought he was closer to 30.
Yeah. I think it's tough to say whether you would want him at any point this season, but
Yeah.
it is trending up at least. The other thing I would say is on the other side of the ball, Austin Eckler is not getting the work from a rushing perspective. He is getting the catches. He had 8 targets, caught
50%.
all of them. But Sony Michel seems to be the goal
Creeping
line
up.
guy, and
Yeah.
he's getting more involved. So, yeah, I don't know if
He
they're
had
going
one
to
more
change
carry.
that. Yeah, he had one more carry, but he had like 4 times as many yards, so almost 5 times as many yards. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to change or if that'll continue. But it's tough if you're an Eckler owner right now. So hopefully that does change. Real quick,
Yeah.
the Olave stat. He was the first New Orleans Saints rookie with at least 100 yards receiving since Traquan Smith did it in week 11 of 2018. That's what it was.
If you had told me that before week 1, I would have said you won't get to halfway through the season before that was busted.
Yeah.
So that's fair. Moving on to our next game. which again, another one we can kind of breeze. I think I said it on the preview show, Rams Cardinals. This game felt like a wet sock going into it, and it doesn't feel any better on the other side. Another game that I think this one and the Packers and Bucks game, they both were like afterthoughts because the Jaguars were blowing out the Chargers, and the Chargers up until the third quarter had a good chance coming back. And then the Falcons and Seahawks game, which we'll talk about next, was close. So there was more attention paid to those two games, and it makes so much sense. Neither team could trust the run very much in this one. Cam Akers kind of came alive in the second half. He had 12 carries, 61 yards, had a touchdown, which is good for Cam Akers owners. He led the backfield and then promptly followed it up with a fumble. Fantasy wise, he still got +4 out of that, but I give Akers time, maybe. I don't know. It's still a committee by whoever has the hot hand. Stafford, 18 for 25, 249 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Cooper Kupp, Ben Skoranek, and Tyler Higbee had 4 receptions each. There were no receiving touchdowns for the Rams in this game, and they won 20-12. Cooper Kupp had a rushing touchdown, but the Rams, I mean, they got the win, which is important. The Cardinals defense did what it had to do versus the most important piece being Cooper Rush. On the other side, Kyler Murray was chucking it, 37 for 58 pass attempts, 314 yards.
Real quick, you really love your Dallas Cowboys. You just called Cooper Kupp Cooper Rush.
Did I really?
But he did have the rush. It's kind of like a weird. It worked out well. Cooper Kupp had the rush for 20 yards and a touchdown. But anyways.
Whatever.
Sorry,
Okay.
to throw you off.
Well, you know what? Maybe Cooper Rush would have thrown a touchdown, but no. Stafford still played very well. So I don't understand. But Murray was chucking it, 37 for 58, 314 yards. James Conner had 39 yards on 13 carries. He did have 3 catches on 5 targets for 18 yards. The real standout, and I think this is the second week in a row, Hollywood Brown, 14 catches, 17 targets, 140 yards. Him and Stephon Diggs have 33, targets apiece?
He has 34 targets. Hollywood does.
Okay, so then,
yeah,
he has the lead in targets for the year. Then I believe. Greg Dortch, 9 catches, 10 targets, 80 yards. I think we talked about him as one of our 5 fantasy flyers until you get Rondale Moore, or coming up in 3 weeks, you get DeAndre Hopkins back. You can safely trust Dortch to have something to do with a productive fantasy day. Zach Ertz, 6 catches, 10 targets, 45 yards, and had 2 red zone targets. So one of them went right over his head. Right over his hands. It's not like he was not paying attention, but just a little too high for him. So I think an Ertz touchdown is coming soon. Another one that can be added to the tight end waiver wire.
He's
Stafford,
consistent.
Yeah, just on the short end, just keep trusting. Cardinals defense was a little sloppy in the first half, but they tightened it up, tried to make a little bit of a comeback, and they couldn't. Everybody kind of had a below par game, but again, if you're interdivision like these two teams are, the biggest thing you got to look for is W's, not stats. So a fantasy sacrifice day. Rams travel to San Francisco on Monday Night Football. Can't wait for that one after this game and the San Francisco game we just talked about. And then Arizona traveling to Carolina. Anything else for you from this one?
Yeah, actually, what are your thoughts on Allen Robinson? This is like
we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get
right.
So he's in my THD, and I will have a little bit of a piece on him. Hopefully we have time to get,
because I do want to point out that Ben Skoranek has been like relatively consistently involved in this offense, which is just funky, but whatever.
Moving on, Falcons at the Seahawks. This was actually a good game, fun to watch. again, paid a little more attention to it. Red Zone did. I think they did anyway. Mariota really didn't scramble. He used his arm. I mean, he didn't scramble for a lot of yards anyway. Kyle Pitts is back. I must have taken a vacation, but he stepped up, had a really good game. You can kind of see that some of his targets are going to come from Drake London. So be prepared, London owners, until Mariota starts throwing the ball 30 to 40 times a game. You are going to see one of them have 13 targets, or this sort of game where one has 8 and the other has 6. Pitts had 5 catches for 87 yards. London, 3 catches for 54 yards. He did have the touchdown, which is very nice to see that they're still targeting him in the red zone. Cordero Patterson, 141 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Mariota had the touchdown in the air. He did have an interception, threw for 229 yards. Really kind of mixed up the run and the pass well. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. On the other side of the ball, Seattle threw the ball 44 times. So Atlanta threw it 20. Seattle threw it 44. And you can kind of see the difference in the run stats too. Rashad Penny, 66 rush yards. Kenneth Walker indeed saw the football once or twice. But passing wise, Smith 32 for 44, 325 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. Tyler Lockett is doing the most with his targets, but DK Metcalf is still matching him per target. Lockett with 11 targets, Metcalf with 12. Lockett had 9 catches, Metcalf had 5. Both of them above 60 yards. But the receptions will help PPR leagues. So the difference right now for those two in my head is whether you are in a half point or if you're in a PPR league. Because Lockett in a PPR league is he's probably earned 20, maybe not 20, but 10 to 15 more points this season than Metcalf. Yeah, I don't really have anything else for this. It was a very close game, very entertaining to watch from what I saw. If you're the Kenneth Walker owner, be patient. His time's coming. Rashad Penny still saw lead back. Yep. Oh, and the tight end spot for Seattle is split between Will Dissly and Noah Fant, and that is just, and honestly, starting to creep into that is Colby Parkinson, who also saw, I think they all saw between 2 and 3 targets or 2 and 4 targets this game. So.
Yeah, and that's been pretty consistent that all 3 have been slightly involved. Dissly, I think, maybe more touchdowns. I don't know. He has 2 touchdowns, 1 in week 1. Maybe Parkinson also has 2, but
Yep.
Yeah,
Fant doesn't have any.
Right, Fant's the odd man out here, but I think he had the most targets. Yeah, most targets and most catches, but least yards, no touchdown. It's
Right.
kind of funky there, spreading the ball around that way. But DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, very involved, and to your point, kind of serviceable. So hopefully better days ahead. But I don't know. I think these 2 teams are not great, and this is not going to be their norm for points.
Interesting. Okay. I don't hate that take. Atlanta takes on the number 1 offense in the NFL. Cleveland Browns. Yes, I just said that. And yes, that's a thing. And Seattle is traveling to Detroit to take on the 4th best offense. So also a thing that we wouldn't have said last year. Just statistically, just saying. Packers and Buccaneers. This is our 3rd of our host games. We'll brush through this one kind of quick. This is another one of those games where the offense was doing some things right and the defense wasn't doing all the things right, and still nobody scored.
Right.
That's the best way I can put it. Romeo Doubs has arrived. There was no one else to pass the ball to. Jamel Dean had Alan Lazard for a good chunk of this game, I believe. I think Tom Brady desperately needs Evans, Godwin, or Jones. I know Russell Gage had 86,000 targets and 85,960 receptions, but you cannot depend on him. I'm it was a great, if you picked him up for this week, great, because he had 12 catches for 87 yards, and you'll take a 20 spot out of Russell Gage in PPR leagues.
And the touchdown.
Yeah, and the touchdown, which I did not put here, but yeah, so that's actually 26 points in the PPR leagues. Cameron Brate, 5 catches, 6 targets, 52 yards. If the 3 are out again next week, well, Evans won't be. Evans will be back because of his suspension. So yeah, Brate, no. Russell Gage, probably not. Rashad Perryman, he might see the same because he only had 3 catches for 44 yards. Fournette, 6 targets, 5 catches, 35 yards. You'd like to see him in the passing game a little bit more. On the other side, Rodgers, 27 for 35. Mostly took care of the football. 2 touchdowns, 255 yards. Romeo Doubs, 8 catches, 8 targets, a touchdown, 73 yards. Alan Lazard, 4 catches, 6 targets, 45 yards, and a touchdown. So I would say probably solidly 2 of your top 3 right there. I would say the other one is Sammy Watkins, but that's going to be your feature
Watkins
go-tos.
is on IR, right?
Right. That's what I was just saying. Those are probably Dobbs and Lazard. We'll try that. That was really, really bad.
Uh-oh.
Lazard and Dobbs will probably be your 1-2 going forward, other than Aaron Jones. But Aaron Jones even took a step back in catches. So Packers end up winning this one 14-12. Tom Brady still moved the ball down the field in the 4th to give Tampa Bay a shot, but if you can't score, it's useless. Like, you can get to the 1-yard line all you want, but Fournette didn't get a chance to score. You didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
This O-line is continuing to really hurt this
Deteriorate.
team on all fronts. Like, Leonard can't get yardage. Tom Brady isn't getting the time that he really wants to make things happen. I mean, he's doing the most that he can with it, but if not for their defense, the Packers could have had more points in this game, and it's tough for the Bucks. They really need their receivers to come back and at least give Brady some better options. But yeah, they got to figure out that O-line so they can have a more balanced attack and give Brady a little more time. But honestly, I think the takeaway here for me, because we knew all that about the Bucks, is the Packers still figuring things out. You like to see this from Dubs, but and I guess Lazard being back only 1 week, so hopefully things get better for them, but they're still struggling. I mean, I guess Tampa Bay's a better defense, so maybe I'm being a little hard on them, but yeah, not what you expect from these offenses, what we've seen in the past, at least.
No, not at all. Not in the slightest, but also a close football game, which we had predicted. This is our 3rd of our games, which we'll touch on a little bit. We both got the team right. Picked the right team.
Nice.
That's nice. We'll go over the stats in a moment. Real quick, we'll touch on our final game this week. It was the Monday night game last night. My Dallas Cowboys traveling to the Meadowlands, aka MetLife, for a visit with the New York Football Giants, the Giants. Both teams came out kind of cautious, I would say, on offense. Cooper Rush spread the ball a little bit. There was a little bit of back and forth. They were running it a little bit and pounding it, and then they would start to short throw it, more or less. And Cooper started to expand a little bit as the game went on. Pollard and Zeke each had a very aggressive run by the end of the game. Pollard's was like 40-some yards. Zeke had like a 30-yarder, which you never see Zeke. Zeke and 30 yards don't belong in the same sentence. But Zeke got the red zone carries and eventually got the touchdown. So most of the red zone carries. Pollard was in there for, I think, 2 snaps, 2 or 3. The Dallas defense is probably the biggest thing. Like, we talked about it after week 2. Now going into week 3, we can convincingly say the Dallas defense is a problem. And I'm saying that I'm not saying that as a Cowboys fan. I'm saying that as a look at it. Micah Parsons has like a 56% block shed rate through 3 weeks. That's unhuman. That league average, I think, is 12. I think they said it on Monday Night Football, which just you're going to have a problem. And for someone who runs a 4.340, like Daniel Jones isn't outrunning him, so
Yeah.
it was a problem. But here's the thing: he didn't play his normal snap count. It was the rest of the line that he well, I guess he kind of was. He was a little shy. He had 100% week 1. He only played 80% last night. But the person who got to Daniel Jones the most was Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
It was DeMarcus Lawrence. 3 sacks for Lawrence. Had a bunch of tackles. I think he had 7 tackles on top of his 3 sacks. Scored the most amount of fantasy points in our 53 league for me, which I wouldn't have expected that one. I'll still hang my head on that one. But DJ sort of started to settle down a little bit and lead New York back a little bit. Giants stopped the Cowboys for a field goal, and it was 23-13. Then the Cowboys returned the favor. The Giants ended up with one last attempt to march it downfield, and it was kind of working. And on the same play where Trayvon Diggs intercepts the ball, Sterling Shepard tears his ACL, as we found out today. And so Diggs gets his first interception. The Cowboys hang on to win. Cooper Rush, 21 for 31, 215 yards and a touchdown. Pollard had 103 yards on the ground. Zeke had 73 yards on the ground, but had a touchdown. CD Lamb, still the wide receiver 1 here, 12 targets, 8 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Noah Brown, serviceable until Michael Gallup comes back, which probably will be this week. So I guess there that goes. 7 targets, 5 catches, 54 yards. For the Giants, DJ, 20 for 37, 196 yards, 1 interception, no passing touchdowns. Saquon Barkley got I believe it was the only touchdown that the Giants had.
Yeah.
14 carries, 81 yards, had the touchdown on a 36-yard run, which was very nice. He had a double cut back and had an open field. And I guess, according to ESPN, he hit 20 miles an hour on that touchdown run, which is good for Saquon. He still got the legs. 4 catches for 45 yards as well. And Sterling Shepard had 5 catches on 10 targets for 49 yards before he, like I said, got that injury. Very impressed, I think, with Saquon's running. I mean, he's doing what Zeke is not, despite Zeke's, touchdown, and he's still getting carries, and they're splitting it, in the backfield for the Cowboys. Barkley was able to navigate a lot of the rush. There were a lot of times where he was finding 5, 6, 7 yards. 14 carries for 81 yards.
Yeah.
Says in and of itself. So, unfortunately, the Giants are no longer undefeated, and they're tied for the second in the NFC East with the Cowboys at 2-1. I don't think once Dak got hurt, anyone would have expected that to be the outcome after 3 games, but it is. And Dallas will stay at home. They will go home to host Washington, and the Giants will stay at home to host the Bears, which I part of me really wants the Bears to make this a really close game or win it, and another part of me wants DJ to just throw for 375 yards out of nowhere
To nobody.
Well, not to nobody really. Kenny
Barkley will
Galladay.
take them all. Kenny Galladay,
Hey,
who had
Kenny
0
Galladay.
catches on 3 targets.
Hey, listen, you, me, and him might have had the same stat line, but he got paid $700,000 yesterday. Did you
For
get paid
real.
$700,000 yesterday? No, you didn't.
Oh
So
my God.
it's an $18 million drop pass he had in the 4th quarter. Yeah. So that moves on. That's that. We'll go through our host v host results real quick. I got Green Bay and Minnesota right. You got Green Bay right. No scores are correct. So at the end of week 3, you have 12 and I have 18. We're going to spice it up, which we kind of talked about. We're going to spice it up for Friday because me and Taylor are head-to-head this week in our 53-man league. And you'll find out what that's going to be on Friday's show, so stay tuned. Real quick, we're going to do a Bengals-Dolphins preview for Thursday night. We kind of covered a lot of the bases, but we'll just reemphasize. Cincinnati is favored by 4 points here. Over under is 47 right now. It all comes down to if Tua is not playing, this is probably a 7 or 8 point spread in favor of Cincinnati. I don't see Teddy Bridgewater being able to throw 40-yard bombs to Waddle or Hill accurately. Another interesting, juxtaposition here: the Dolphins defense versus the Bengals O-line. You just talked about Jerome Baker and Javon Holland, mostly Jerome Baker, and even Emmanuel Agba. But if they can get through the Bengals O-line, even if Tua is not playing, I think it's going to bring the game a little closer. The Bengals had a rebound game against the Jets, but the Jets aren't the Dolphins. I see a potential for a Jamar Chase upside game here. We saw kind of how the receiving goes, assuming, well, no, not even really assuming, but their receiving for Miami against Baltimore was not, they didn't stop a lot. Mark Andrews and Bateman had great games last week. So, I also think both teams have a lot to prove going into Thursday Night Football. It is in Miami.
Is
which,
it? I think it's in Cincinnati.
Well, that would make sense, and I got it backwards because there is still that hurricane thing.
Yeah.
So I might have it backwards because I don't hear anything about that game. I just hear stuff about Tampa Bay. So I don't know. I would take the Dolphins in this if Tua plays. I don't think 4 points is just based on what we've seen out of the Bengals and the O-line. Tyler Boyd has made his face known. So I go with the Dolphins in this. If Tua's not playing, I'll take the Bengals.
Yeah, if Tua's not playing, I agree. It is in Cincinnati, which I guess is why the line is the way it is. I'm hoping that's not because they think Tua's going to be out, because yeah, I would agree with that. Honestly, if Tua's in, I don't understand why, apart from it being in Cincinnati, I would think Dolphins win this game, but at least the way that the Bengals have been playing and the way that the Dolphins have been playing, Dolphins are one of 2 teams that are undefeated, the other team being the Eagles, unless I'm missing somebody.
The Bills?
No, Bills lost this week to Miami.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Duh. We just covered that. See, that game was so, no, I got them backwards. Okay. All right. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this all like we said, all boils down to Tua. Miami's defense is good enough to really make the Burrow and the Bengals struggle here, including Mixon or P. Ryan, because their O-line has not been great, the Bengals O-line. So honestly, I don't understand why the Bengals are favored outside of Tua not playing.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to play a quick game of, quick name game / top flop drop. It's kind of a segment that we like to do. We finally got to it this week. So real quick, I'll just go through with a kind of like a would you rather and we'll do like a, now that we're kind of into injury season and we're seeing it boil down. Let's do like a pickup, would you? Like a waiver wire, I guess. Those are the words I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're trying to hint at here.
Mark Ingram or Travis Etienne for you?
That's That's a tough one. I don't see much of a difference there unless Kamara is out. I guess I'm leaning towards Ingram, but if Kamara is healthy, Etienne's probably going to get more usage.
Zay Jones or Allen Robinson? I think this one's pretty easy, and I will tell you why you're right.
It's insane that I'm going to say Zay Jones, but
it's not insane. We know it. He's seeing 90% of snaps. He's seeing between 8 and 10 targets a game. Allen Robinson seems like a forgotten. Again, I kind of want to throw this week out because Cardinals and the Rams, you just want to win interdivision. You want to be number 1 when you go into the playoffs, and I get that. It starts with beating the other 3 teams in your division 5 or 6 of the times out of the 6 that you play them. But this is 2 out of 3 games where Allen Robinson has done nothing, virtually nothing. And it's not his fault. It's not like he's not a good wide receiver by any means, but they're just not throwing him the ball.
Right.
If I have him on my team, any of these other names, Tyler Boyd, drop him, drop Robinson, get Boyd. Okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, so far Boyd's has more points.
By a mile.
Yeah.
By a mile. It's not even close. I feel bad for the person who drafted Robbie Anderson and Allen Robinson.
Hmm.
Because hopefully you have Jonathan Taylor, and he's not even been all that all-star worthy, but hopefully you have some players somewhere else because it's bad. Tyler Conklin or Durham Smith.
Conklin, honestly, I haven't really looked at Smith or Smythe that much, but Conklin has the most routes and targets of I think all tight ends. He's very involved. They went after him in the offseason. I like Conklin a decent amount actually. Outside of that question alone, yeah.
David Njoku or Tyler Conklin?
This is where it gets a little tougher. I've liked Njoku, and I wanted to see him more involved in the first couple weeks. He finally does it. This is obviously a top game for him. I think I still might lean Conklin just in terms of his usage, but Njoku's probably not probably. He definitely has a higher ceiling. So
Okay.
I guess balance that with what the rest of your team looks like.
For the Mac Jones owner who is without a quarterback now, or it probably only pertains to maybe super flex leagues.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Mac Jones is, your QB1
Or
unless
dynasty.
you drafted. Yeah. Are you looking at? I'm going to give you 3 on this one because I think is it Mariota, Cooper Rush, Jameis Winston. You have plus sides to all 3 of these, so I made this really tough.
I think I'm leaning Mariota. He's actually been pretty decent so far, and he does sometimes have some rushing in there. Cooper Rush also has been better than expected, but he doesn't have the ceiling that Mariota has. Winston does have a decent ceiling, but he also has a very crazy floor when he throws a ton of interceptions or just misses the mark on people.
See last week.
Right. So yeah, it's kind of like Winston, Mariota, high ceiling, Cooper Rush, very stable at this point. Not a high ceiling, not a decent floor. So yeah, for me it's Mariota, and then I think I might put Rush above Winston, but again, Winston higher ceiling. I don't know.
Winston higher ceiling, Rush higher floor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Cooper Rush probably only has 2 more weeks at best, unless for some reason they're like, hey, you're winning games, let's keep going. But that's not gonna happen.
I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
Real quick on I'll give mine. Romeo Dubs top. You can probably keep him in a flex conversation. Chris Olave is a starter. Zay Jones is a high quality flex. Michael Gallup, keep an eye for this week. If he plays, he'll probably be in that flex conversation. Cole Kmet, be patient. Probably still going to be in the tight end conversation. I have nothing else. I think that's going to wrap it up.
Daniel Bellinger. He's getting more involved. Rookie tight end for the Giants.
There's the final word. I'm Derek for the Fantasy Flyer. We're going to sign off.
Peace out.